Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studio, it's time for Family Business Radio. Showcasing outstanding family businesses and the advisors who assist them.
Good afternoon. You're listening to an episode of Family Business Radio. I'm your host, Anthony Chen. Today, we have two amazing guests to kind of share their origin stories of how they got into their business, particularly into the family planning business, and kind of their origin story of what makes them unique. To kind of start us off with the show, we have Andrea Carpenter with the Transition Strategists. Welcome to the show.
Hi, so glad to be here.
Great. Thank you for coming on. So kind of share with the audience as to how someone young like yourself got so involved so quickly, knees deep into the family business.
Yeah, so I'm a rising Gen. I'm Gen 2 in my family. I watched my dad build and sell a successful company. I always joke that he made the decision for me that I didn't have to step into the family business, but then I essentially inherited what became the family limited partnership, and people don't really understand how much similarity that can have to a family business. And as I was thinking about my work and what I wanted to do, I was working in UX design. I was doing a lot of facilitation. I loved bringing groups together, and it was just a big question of how could I bring together next gens and rising gens who have such diverse experiences working inside their successful families, whether they choose to go into the family business or they decide they are going to opt out of the family business and it's not the right path for them. I was really looking at what that space would look like. Long story short, that led me down a path which ultimately introduced me to my now business partner, Elizabeth Ledoux. The Transition Strategists is her company. We focus on really the human side of family business and internal succession planning. So how do we make a roadmap and what does that look like? At the time, I thought, no, that's not really my fit because I want to do stuff with next gens. And the more I sort of dove into that, I realized this super hinges on successors being willing and excited and passionate about coming into the family business, because if a successor, if it's not aligned for them, and the next generation isn't excited or it doesn't follow their life's passion, then there's not really a point of trying to force a succession. That's just how resentment and things can build up inside of a family. So when Elizabeth made the offer, like, hey, do you want to come support next gens inside of our company? It just felt so aligned. What I learned about myself was I'm a refiner. And so I love to sort of take something that someone else has built and figure out how to make it better. So we've been quite the dream team. She's the visionary. I sit in kind of an implementation seat, just figuring out how to bring this work to more families. And like I said, it's a really human-centered approach to thinking about transition planning, rooted in what the people want and need. In addition to what are the assets, how much is it worth, how are we going to make sure that everyone kind of exits well on the other side. So that's a little bit how I got into this work.
And particularly the two phrases that you use, calling the next gen and more specifically being passionate and looking at a human element, because a lot of us working in M&A field, it's very much in the dollar and cents and the EBITDA and the multiples. I can just throw all the lingos that are very quote unquote technical or numbers driven, but you specifically at your firm highlight the human element. Share with the audience, like, what is the human? Because I'm assuming it's not just dollars and cents.
Yes. And if you're an M&A advisor or a financial advisor, an estate attorney, CFO, Jamie, we love you. We love working with you. The money is such a critical and important piece because that's where things can really start to break down and where there can be some like real conflict and tension start to come, because those are really hard things to talk about. So those are super critical. But if we don't understand and know kind of the base or what's underlying, like where is someone trying to go? What are they trying to do? What are those things that are most important to them? If one of my non-negotiables is that every morning I can wake up and spend 2 hours with my daughter before she goes to school, then going into a family business where I have to be there at 6 a.m. to open things up and whatever else, that's going to be in conflict with like who I am as a person and what's important to me. And I'm not going to feel satisfied and I'm not going to be happy about that. And so sometimes these things are they end up feeling like so simple, or like, oh, that was good, kind of maybe an obvious thing, or hey, I didn't even really realize how important that was to me, or that became a non-negotiable. So when we talk about the human side, it's digging into like, what do the people actually want in a situation? Is a successor actually ready to come in? What's a parent's kind of perspective? Or how are they looking at a kid being ready to actually step into the business? What kind of skills do they need to learn? Is there mindset shifts? Is it actually going to be in alignment or not? And so our process fits really nicely in with all of the work that estate planners and financial advisors and all of these other people need to do to come up with a comprehensive succession plan. But we can really start at the beginning to help make sure that whatever that plan is in alignment. Because a lot of times we find out there's 10 to 15 different ways that you could structure a deal, but maybe only 2 or 3 of those actually give every single person in that transition a better chance at an outcome feeling super good and authentic for themselves. And that's how we define transitioning well, is that people feel good on the other end of it.
It's not just about, oh, it makes sense on paper, dollars, but as you mentioned, is that there's certain things that the dollars and money can't exactly buy. Like you mentioned, starting 2 hours a day early, spending time with their kids, and then they can go full bore 110% into the business. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of keep up a quick example off the top of your head working with a client where something was kind of similar, where it was a non-negotiable and that really was about to break the deal, but you dug a little deeper in just conversation? Oh, this is what really what the hang up was. Not the money, not the contract, but this.
Mm-hmm. I can talk about my own lived experience. So when Elizabeth invited me in to become a successor inside her business, it's kind of the same way that a parent might formally invite a child to come in. Like, hey, I'm thinking about this role. Would you be interested in coming up? When she invited me in, we used the objectives matrix. And even just to see, like, one of the things that I wrote on my objectives matrix was, I would love to be a 50-50 or majority partner, because at the time I was on a track of starting my own business. Mm-hmm. I thought that what I wanted to do was to be the owner of my own business. And one of Elizabeth's non-negotiables was that she was going to stay majority owner until she was basically ready to retire. Mm-hmm. And because we were able to look at, okay, Andrea wants to be majority owner, but it's not a deal breaker for her, but it is a deal breaker for Elizabeth. Now let's talk about kind of where that's coming from and how that stems for both of us. And what that helped me do is it helped me change my thinking and show up a little bit differently when we started negotiating about how we were actually going to structure our deal, and like what percentage am I going to buy in at what time, and all of those different components, because I understood more about where she was coming from. And I knew that that was a non-negotiable for her. So did all those other things that were going to be benefits outweigh? And ultimately, it helped me actually change my mind. I was like, well, if I'm not majority owner, I'm in a season of life. My family is growing. Maybe I don't want to be the majority owner of a company right now, but I do still want to grow equity in a company. And it ended up feeling like a really good fit. But I don't think that we would have been able to jump that quickly into a conversation that specific if we hadn't sat down and gone through discussing that together.
Well, then I guess kind of the obvious elephant in the room question is, as you're having this quote unquote negotiation conversation, it was just two of you just kind of sitting down and kind of hashing over the table, and I guess white pad or yellow pad. I mean, did you have attorneys involved, or they were way much after that you both already cleared the air?
I'm a big fan of bringing attorneys in once you kind of figure other things out. Mm-hmm. For us to be on the same page and really know with conviction that we were going to move forward and that things were kind of structured. We had talked through all of the major points in our deal. What's our timeline going to be? What percentage equity are we moving when? What do we think the buy-in price is going to be? And so all of this like human-centered squishy work that we like to call it around, like, Andrea wants to be there for her kids in the morning, and it's important to me that I can do this, and that I am growing with a team, and that the business is growing quickly, and that I feel challenged in my work. All of that stuff led up to, okay, so now we can look at how the deal is actually structured, and we can start to put out on paper what we want. And honestly, it still took us a couple months to get all those legal documents drafted. I think that stuff just takes time as you get into the nuance. You don't come with 100% like perfect version of it,
Mhm.
but we had a lot more conviction walking in around the two of us being aligned in what we thought was going to be appropriate. So we could both answer more confidently when lawyers were asking questions about what we wanted. And I think that was a breath of fresh air for them. Honestly, they complimented us a lot on how much in communication we were with each other. But it's a value that we had that we knew going into that.
You all kind of here's two people who really want the deal to work out, very motivated to get it done, and it still took months, really.
Mhm.
And you both kind of going into the same. It sounds like you did 50% of the homework already before you even presented to the attorney, and it still took that long. Now, for the
Mhm.
listeners, imagine not having the same exact transparent alignment, how long that would take.
And how much like monetary cost sometimes that can take to go to a lawyer and to try to work out like conflict is good. We love conflict. I think that there's different levels of conflict, right?
Mm.
But like I have strong conviction in this and I have strong conviction in this. Like let's talk about where we're each coming from and what our perspectives are here and have a good honest dialogue. I don't need to do that on my $500 an hour lawyer's Zoom room.
Mhm.
Let's do that in another place that's safe. Maybe there's an outside facilitator, but there's lots of stuff to work through to make sure that people feel good and no one feels pressured because people show up with different personality types too. I'm a little bit more internal. Elizabeth, we have a personality assessment called the IMAP. She's a high persuader, is one of her kind of personality traits. And so she can come on really strong, and I'm kind of internal, and I can turn myself off and turn in. And I know that about myself. And so in a situation, if Elizabeth was persuading me and I'm sitting in a room with a lawyer and I'm like, this is a waste of money, for me to say, okay, you know what? I think it's okay. Let's just like leave this for now. And then for me to feel that resentment later. It's just the way that people show up and how they want to be supported in any given situation. There's a lot of nuance there that can happen. So yes, I don't think we need to necessarily do that in the room with our lawyers. But on the flip side, for our legal teams to have really good context about all the things that people want and the outcomes that we're hoping for, that helps them come up with really creative strategies and ways to help manage your portfolio or structure your deal and stuff like that.
So kind of then bringing back to what you do for family business or business owners in general, when they get into kind of a conflict, or let's say, for example, from the next gen with the parents, how do you guys kind of come in to mediate that?
Yeah, it depends on the level of conflict. We're definitely not registered psychologists. There are certain times where a mediator or like actually going to see someone with a degree is really important. But a lot of times, understanding where someone's coming from or how they make decisions is a really good way to help kind of level set the room. Our team was on a retreat last week with a family, and some of the people coming in said, I'm really nervous about this. I think I'm going to just sit back and kind of watch and see what people do. So they weren't even planning to kind of participate because they could sense that conflict was going to bubble up and have fun. So the thing that we started with was called our IMAP assessment. And so you talk about how people are wired. What's their influencing style? So are they someone who's persuading, or are they someone who's a director? Like, I'm just going to tell you exactly how it is. Or are they more of an analyst? That's me. They want to make sure everything that they're saying is perfectly right before they say it out loud. Or maybe they're higher cooperators. So those are the four: director, persuader, cooperator, and analyst. Cooperators just want to make sure everyone's happy. They're just trying to make things are good. And so you can once you understand this about each other, the family starts to call each other out. Hey, I think that's your director being a little bit too strong
Mm-hmm.
right now. Can we like reframe this conversation or reset? And for a lot of times, just that like little bit of like call out or acknowledgement, like, hey, you're showing up in a way that is not feeling very good to me right now. Can we kind of reset on that? It gives the family a common language. So that's one tool that we've seen help quite a bit with conflict inside a family business, especially when kind of in a large group working through some of the more strategic components of a transition plan.
So then kind of going back to, you mentioned being passionate working with the next gen and helping them kind of transition, stepping in to take that big responsibility of now officially, quote unquote, eventual ownership of the business, and having a lot of that, I guess, I'm going to call it burden baggage of being able to honor the founders carrying forward. How do you have that conversation and help them navigate through that? And then also the expectation from the parents or the founders saying, oh, I hope I did raise my kids right, that they can kind of continue to torch. I mean, those are two really extreme competing goals and burdens on both parties.
I think the world tries to tell us a lot of times that it is so extreme. And a lot of times when you get into it, a parent really just wants what's best for their kid, and a kid doesn't want to disappoint their parent. That's a little bit of a generalization, but a lot of times in the situation that we see, it can boil down to just like people aren't quite communicating with each other what they expect or what someone is looking for. A lot of times when I'm talking to next gens, I like to remind them, like, you're not your parents. You're still your own whole person. And just because your parents were successful or did this thing ahead of you, that doesn't mean that you have to mold or do exactly what they did before. You can do something and you should do something that feels 100% authentic to you. So that's what I'm doing with a lot of my work at Your Next Gen Friend, which is just conversations that I'm having with next gens around like the very different experiences. Because there's next gens who decide to go into the business. There's some who decide to opt out. There's some that never get an invite extended because a parent perceives them a certain way, or they did something in the past. And so, yeah, I think it just boils down to communication and the owners and the next gens really knowing what their life path is, or at least their passion, to make sure that what they're stepping into feels 100% in alignment. Because a lot of times when we do this work, a next gen will share, like, I'm really only doing this because I think my parent is going to be disappointed, or they're not going to want to talk to me anymore if I don't want to do that. So, okay, let's figure out how to facilitate and have a conversation with your parent about that exact thing. And at the end of that, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm sorry that you felt that way. That is not at all how we intended. On the flip side, we've had parents come and they're like, my kids have no interest in this business at all. And sometimes that's quite true. You want to let them go on their own path, but it's also an obligation to educate them on what the possibility could be for them. And so for a next gen to kind of learn, like, okay, my dad built this, it doesn't mean that you have to be in an operating seat in the business like your parents were. Maybe there's a board role, like maybe you have more of an ownership role, but you're not active in the day-to-day of the business. And there's some other manager system that could be put in place. And the next gens, because their worldview is only exactly what they saw their parents do, they don't realize all these other options that could be out there for them. So it is a two-way education street sometimes on helping the parents understand more about what their kids might truly want, but also we should educate the next gens on options that are available to them. And that's why we're going to start with that question of why and what's important to you. Because if a next gen says, well, I think financial freedom's pretty good and I want to be able to travel and it's important to me to do this with my family, like a really cool way to do that is with potentially some passive income, maybe through the family business or in some capacity. And so maybe exploring this is something that you want to explore. So I do think it's a two-way street of educating both the current business owners and the next gens.
So to kind of piggyback on that particular theme is, as you're having these conversations, it almost boils down, almost probably overgeneralization, but it comes down to just communication. It's just having that conversation, and maybe one or both sides could be guilty of not wanting to be the first to take that first step because maybe they don't want to appear weak to their parents, or maybe they don't want to appear weak to their kids because they're being put on such a high pedestal that they don't want to, say, shatter that image.
It's super vulnerable for a parent. I would say it depends on your family's culture, but for many people, the parents are so afraid to start talking about transition, or they kind of flippantly say, hey, yeah, I would love for you to take over the business in 7 years. And then 5 years passed and the successors are knocking down our door and they're like, my parents said it was going to be 7 years, but we haven't even talked about it since then. Like that person the next gen took that as gospel, because you said something at one point. And so how do we kind of have that continual conversation or some type of tools? And that's where an outside facilitator can really be like, okay, I think I just saw you say that thing, and someone might have perceived this not the way that you intended. Maybe we should revisit that conversation. And so that's a lot of our work when we talk about creating a transition roadmap. Obviously, we need to get everyone's perspectives kind of in. And so that's what we call the transition compass. Why do I want to transition? And what does the successor want really? What are the assets of the business? Who are the potential successors? And even that could even be selling to a third party. And when do we want to transition? And there's a lot of whens. Like, when am I going to pass to my successor? When am I going to step out of the day to day? When is someone going to start purchasing equity? When is the equity transfer going to be purchased? So we call them the many wins because it's not all at once. And then you get into how much money do we actually need and how is it going to actually execute. Once you figure out all that people stuff and have all that communication with the family, then you can get in there with your legal teams and figure out those legal structures. And then you kind of have a roadmap or a direction of where you're going. And it gives you a lot more flexibility actually to pivot as things come up. Like, Elizabeth and I were on path for our deal, and then I found out I was pregnant after a couple years of us trying. And so that was really exciting, but I was like, oh, dang, we just started working on our legal documents. Like, is this still what I want? And so we made the decision together to pause, right? But because we knew where we were going and the path that we were going on, and that maybe someday that would be a possibility, it gave us that flexibility to kind of do that. And so that's great for business owners, and it's great for successors to have that timeline or the beginning of a timeline mapped out, because there's always some source of common truth for everyone to go back to and be like, hey, I think we're off from what we said. Let's have a conversation about this, because spoiler alert, the transition plan that you think it's going to be is not usually what's going to come out on the other end. Like, I would say 99% of the time we're deviating, but that's in your power. Then you get to make that conscious choice together to take that deviation versus just being surprised that something changed and kind of made that decision for you.
Congratulations. How old is the little one then?
Oh, she's 10 months now. So that also extended the time of our documents, but yeah.
Well, speaking of then, of course, this podcast being named Family Business Radio, share with us insights to those that are also listening that may be also going through your same journey. It's like, oh, I'm perhaps on the fence of starting my own business, but at the same time, I'm at a life stage where I want to start a family. What would be some kind of words of wisdom as you're going through now 10 months in, some advice that you would share to those that are listening that are about to take that same step, things that you would have liked to know 10 months ago?
I think something that I've really walked away with is how I want my daughter to perceive me. I still look up to my parents so much. Like, what I watched my dad do in growing a business. I mean, he was hustling. And he worked really hard when I was a kid. But he also showed up for our family, and he showed up for me. And the opportunity that that's given me, and I think my sisters would say the same, the opportunity that that's given us to be a family unit and do cool things and also just give back to the world in a really cool capacity. It feels like I stepped out of the fog a little bit, and I'm doing my life's work right now, working with next gens. And this has been super fulfilling. And so to watch my dad build and grow something that he was able to give that back for our family, I want to be able to do the same for my daughter. And that is, I think that's just who I am as a person. So it feels very authentic to me. I think at the beginning, I only did it because I saw my dad grow a business, and I thought that's what I was supposed to do. So when you talk about the kind of how a child perceives a parent, right? And showing up, it wasn't even that I had the choice of going into a family business or not, but I just felt like, oh, I saw my dad do that. That's what I'm supposed to do. But now I've walked this path and it feels so authentic to me. Elizabeth and I made a very conscious choice. Like, should we pursue going forward with this partnership exploration right now? And I said, let me just keep working with you to see if this, like, I still feel excited about this. And I came out of the other end of my maternity leave, and I was like, yes, like, my conviction was stronger. And so I knew that that felt really right. And so I guess that would be my kind of what I've learned, and also the advice I would give others is if it doesn't feel like your authentic path, or if something feels wrong, you have to trust that gut feeling. But for me, I trusted that gut feeling that this was going to be a really good path. And I'm just having so much fun meeting and working with and supporting next gens, because I think the families and the family business is really the backbone of our society and our world. So keeping them together and keeping them strong is one of the greatest gifts that we can give. So I'm super happy that I chose this path. Yeah, it just feels so good to me.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and your passion, and I wish for those who can actually see you be able to exude physically like you are the living embodiment of living that dream and being able to carry that torch from one generation to the next. So for those that are listening, to, oh wow, it sounds like she's got a lot of it figured out in a way, and she's practicing what she's preaching. How can our listeners best reach out and find you, consult with you?
Yeah, so please find me on LinkedIn, Andrea Carpenter. The business is the Transition Strategist. I do have kind of some free downloads for you. So that would be transitionstrategist.com/FB radio for Family Business Radio. And then my work for Next Gens, like I said, that's my favorite work. So if you're a Next Gen listening to this, I want you to know that I see you. I hear you. I know that how unique your experience is. And so I'm your Next Gen friend on all channels, Instagram, YouTube, for that. So thanks, Anthony, for having me on.
Right, thank you. Now, speaking of Next Gen, we have a gentleman who's also already done the passing of the torch and then rebuilding, because these just can't stay retired away. So I would love to introduce Jamie Reynolds with Reynolds CFO Services.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
So Jamie, share with our audience kind of your origin story and how you were like in Business 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. I like that, Business 2.0. Yeah, so the first half of my career was in the corporate side, combination of operations and finance leadership roles for 23 years. And then in January 2018, I launched a fractional CFO firm. So I've been doing that for 7.5 years now. I really enjoyed the time I spent in corporate. You know, a lot of people kind of want to say negative things about that. And I'm sure I could, if I wanted to, go down that path too, but I just choose not to. So, there were a lot of positives as well. I certainly learned a lot about leadership, learned a lot that I didn't necessarily learn in MBA school, just actually hands-on right there. After a while, I did feel a pull to something else. And through the advice of a friend of mine who owned a law firm in town, I decided to kind of go out on my own and say, okay, well, in a typical corporate world, you have a FP&A team, a financial planning and analysis team, right? Mm-hmm. And they're the team that builds budgets, does a lot of the cash flow stuff. They a big part of it is looking at strategy, whether it is M&A, whether it's selling off brands or purchasing businesses. So you get into the M&A work, and then a lot of it is just around business financial decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Things that, and if you try to compare that to like a small family business, you tend to have a bookkeeper, or hopefully you do. And then you tend to have a tax accountant or CPA to do your taxes, but you don't really have someone going, hey, this restaurant's doing really well. We should open up a second one on the other side of town. Mm-hmm. Or do we have the right staffing, in our business? Or, is our pricing right? How can we increase margins? Those are things that a typical bookkeeper, it's not really in their sphere, or, a CPA that's, focusing more on tax strategy, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where a fractional CFO comes in, where we're able to, instead of hiring someone full time, we can come in and provide a fraction of time toward your business. And we don't break it up into fractions like hours. We just, we go through different plans that we have based on levels of service or different services that we offer. Mm-hmm. And based on that, we're able to work with multiple clients, helping them in whatever specific areas they need to help them grow. And so we've seen it. To me, I've really enjoyed it because, even in a corporate role, how you can see on paper growth or the fruit of your labor from a financial standpoint, it's all on paper. Whereas when it's a family business, you actually see how it impacts the person's family. It's real life. It's real stuff, right? Mm. You get to know the people, and you understand that, hey, they've got a kid that's about to go to college, right? Now their business is bringing in more money. They can feel more comfortable about paying that bill, right? Mm-hmm. And so you get to immediately see the fruit of that work. and you get to see how it impacts a person's family. And that's, to me, it kind of fit right into kind of where my heart is with it. And so I appreciate all that I learned throughout the corporate career, and I'm excited to be able to, use those same skills to help small businesses.
So you mentioned about having that conversation with that attorney and trying to convince you to go into bed. How did that, I'm assuming, was that kind of the tip over the fence, or was that just start of the avalanche of this little snowball that started rolling?
So it was the tip.
Okay.
I mean, because I kind of, maybe itch is the right word. I had kind of an itch. Like I don't feel like I'm enjoying this as much as I used to. I feel like I want to do something else. And, he said, well, I know, like with my firm, he said, I have a law degree and I run a law firm, and nowhere did anyone ever teach me how to run a business, because a law firm, guess what, is a business. Right. And so, he's like, I know I could use your help, and the person that's doing my bookkeeping can't help me with that. And my tax accountant can't help me with that, but you can. And so he was also my first client.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, he believed in your mission. He believed in what you can do. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, so I had that business that I started January 2018. It was called FinTeam Business Consulting, and it's still in existence. I sold it in May of 2023, so 2 years ago, and it's being run out of Charlotte, North Carolina. It's still a great organization. They've changed a little bit of the focus to be more of a back office, and I did some independent contractor work for a while, and then relaunched Reynolds CFO Services in November of last year. So Reynolds CFO Services is kind of what FinTeam was at the beginning, but it's focused more on small and mid-sized businesses and just kind of helping fill that role from a business strategy perspective. Yeah.
So you've already had one successful transition. What pulled you back into the game?
I actually thought that I would go back into corporate.
Oh,
okay. So I wasn't thinking about selling my business until someone made me an offer for it. And it's one of those situations where you're like, all right, well, maybe I want to sell the business, right?
Yeah.
So I did that and considered going back into that, and then quickly remembered that, no, this is not where my heart is, right? My heart is with the small and mid-sized businesses. And so that's why I went back into it. And I live in Virginia, but I have an office here in Atlanta, and kind of go back and forth, and been doing that really for about 7.5 years now. So it's two offices, 2 locations, but it's definitely worth it. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
And kind of share with the audience kind of your background with your family and how you're able to balance that, and also having family back home in Virginia. Okay,
yeah, sure. So on a personal note, I actually had a health scare in 2019 and had a heart attack, and I was about 1.5 years into my fractional CFO business, and a friend of mine came to visit me in the hospital after it, and we were coworkers back in the corporate days together. And he said, "Man, I knew this would happen. You started your own business, and this is a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress, and I was worried about you." And I said, "You know what? This had nothing to do with it. I have a lot less stress now than I did before. This is more of everyone in our families had heart attacks at this age. It's crazy." And the reason why I share that is because I think there's a common misconception that, when you own your own business, it's always a ton of hours. And yes and no. So when you own your own business, you feel like you're never off work because you're always thinking about it. So in that aspect, yes, it is a lot of hours. However, you do tend to, for the most part, and this is a generalization, but you do tend to have a little bit more flexibility with those hours. For example, if there's something I want to attend with my kids during the day, I can do that knowing that I can pick up some work later in the evening or push a meeting out or something like that. I have a lot more flexibility. The other thing is, again, like I said before, just being able to see the fruits of your labor and how your work is actually helping not just your client, but it's a family thing, because the businesses we're helping, how well that client does, that immediately impacts their family. So, think about, like, if you're working with a large corporation, let's say you're working with a large corporation and I contract with you, whether that corporation does well or not from our business relationship, may impact you financially a little bit, may impact your quarterly bonus or some of your compensation or whatever. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, you still get the same dollar amount deposited in your checking account every 2 weeks. But when it's your family business, then it could be pretty drastic, good or bad, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a direct impact there, and that's what kind of keeps me going. And it also, from just from a mental health state, I'm remaining positive and, seeing those fruits and things like that really help with that. From my family perspective, you can't really have a cutoff of, okay, so these hours I'm going to be thinking about my business. These hours I'm going to be thinking about my family. We try to do that, but it's kind of like there's a saying about being present with your kids. Yeah. So you could be physically in the room with your kids. You can even be engaging with, like, maybe it's playing video games or whatever. But if the whole time your mind is on, man, I got this marketing meeting next week and I got to do this. Are you really spending quality time with your kids? And so that's been a real eye opener for me, and a way that I've tried to change the way I help balance that work-life relationship. Right. Mm-hmm. But because it's almost a natural thing when you're a business owner to just constantly be thinking about your business, and you want to be there for your family. And like I said, it goes well beyond just showing up at the baseball game or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. It's actually being engaged and being with them in your thoughts as well, right? Not just playing a video game and thinking about the meeting coming up next week, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, after that health scare, was the family supportive of the client, at least on the surface, for those that are, like, not in the trenches? Yeah. For those in the corporate, they might view an independent business, that's a lot more stress, even though, right. And as you're kind of sharing here, it's like, well, actually you have a little bit more control over your time. In that situation, how was kind of your family's reaction perspective? Were they still supportive? Hey, we believe in your mission and go, Dad, go. Or were they actually saying, or were they thinking, this is putting on more stress on you and you should go to corporate? Like, how was that navigating that conversation?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it was a lot more of the support for, hey, Dad, you got this kind of thing, as opposed to, wow, I don't know if you made the right decision, if this, we should go a different route. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I just really appreciate all the love and support I got from them. And I probably went back to work too early. It hadn't even been a week after my heart attack, just a few days later, and I was already on Zoom calls, and people were like, what are you doing?
Jamie.
So I'm like, people are like, what are you doing on the call? Right. Yeah. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just watch TV? I mean, I got to get back into this, I got to live my life. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I'll probably jump back into it a little too early. I used to be on the coffee team at our church, and there's a picture of me. Someone took the lady that was my cardiologist when I was in the hospital after the heart attack. She was visiting our church, and she comes up to the line, and so someone took a picture of me serving her coffee. It was really cool. But that was like, I don't know, like 3 weeks or something after the heart attack. I was there serving her coffee, and she's like, you should be sitting down. You shouldn't be standing up, Jamie. But, I guess this is the way I am. I like to just keep going and not try not to reflect on that too much. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now we fast forward.
This is 2.0.
As you're kind of going through this whole journey, is there a particular case that really stands out to you that makes you go, yeah, not only am I in the right field and make the right decision, this particular client case just more or less answered the question of my purpose?
I can give you probably two examples. Mm-hmm. So one was a business that was run by a couple that was getting up in age and they wanted to retire, right? Mm-hmm. Typical scenario. And so they wanted their daughter to run the business. even though she was involved in it, it was a pool business. Even though she was involved in it, it was more from an operational standpoint. So her and her husband were involved operationally, like with helping the construction of building in-ground pools and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff, right? But they never got involved in the financial aspect of it. So when it came to taking over the business, they just felt like they were totally in the dark in that very important area that really determines the success of the business, the numbers, right? And so I actually just met with them on multiple occasions and went through some training with them and just kind of led them along the way. It wasn't something I typically do. It wasn't like a fractional CFO package. It was more like, hey, these are some areas you probably need some more education in. And so we can spend several hours doing that. And we just put something together. And they're still running the business now. It was her parents. So her son now has graduated from college and he's sort of running the business now. So, I helped teach the second generation. And now we're already in the third generation that's working on running it or is running it right now. So that was a lot of fun to see that. And the couple, the second generation, the husband, he and I are now in the same hunt club. And so, we see each other quite often during hunting season and, he talks about it every now and then. And so it's a lot of fun to, again, see the impact on a person's life outside of just what numbers look like on an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. Right. So that's one example. Another example is, this was with an HVAC company, but it tends to be with, anyone who's in a business that is a skilled business like that, where you're really good at what you do. Like, let's say you're a plumber and you're really, really good at it. Now you're getting way too many calls. So you're having to hire more people to help you out. Before you know it, now you've got 20 trucks, you've got 40 employees or whatever. And now you're running a business, and that's not what he or she signed up for. They signed up to be a plumber because that's what they enjoy, not running a business. So then they end up bringing in their spouses, their children, their cousins, everybody else to help them run the business. And then it becomes a family business, not because these other family members necessarily are experts in those areas. They were just family members that were willing to help in those areas. So then you have some training opportunities and things like that. So I've had a lot of opportunities in those types of scenarios as well, where in order to make the business successful, family members are brought in to help out. They have a good heart. They're passionate about it, but maybe they weren't educated in it or didn't have as much experience in it. So they need someone else to come in. Maybe it's someone like myself, fractional CFO, maybe it's marketing, could be a lot of different things. But yeah, I've seen a lot of that scenario as well when it comes to family business.
So my understanding is a little different from most other fractional CFOs, where they actually come in and do the work for the business. You also help provide the tools and upskill, if that's the right word, or educate the people that are already in the business. It's not that they don't have the passion. The passion's already there. They just don't have the tools. Yeah. And you just come in and say, well, here's all the tools to get you up to speed so they can run with it. Is that kind of a good, better understanding?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. The other thing too is we all have different skills, right? We all, nobody starts a business because they're good at accounting, unless they're starting an accounting firm. Hopefully they like accounting. Yes. But anybody else, it's that there's something else that they're really skilled at. And so they need that kind of support in the areas that they're not skilled at, right? All those things are areas that we all outsource to other folks, right? And so the fractional CFO makes sense in that scenario. The other advantage of going the fractional CFO route is it gives you access to a team. It's not one individual. So if you were to say, well, let me just hire someone part-time or full-time and see how it goes. That's one person, may or may not work out. It's not a team of people. A team of people, again, they like folks on my team, some are strong in analysis, some are strong accountants. So there's different skill sets there that make up the team that's that represents a lot more than what just me as an individual can do or contribute to an organization.
So for those who are kind of listening in and just hearing for the first time, like, oh, I thought it was for fractional CFO, that you guys just kind of come in and manage my finance or financial plan for me. It also sounds like you can help me bring someone that's within my family to, let's say, educate them and get them up to speed. What other things should we be aware about that Jamie can provide that at least stereotypically or just on the surface in public we are just not aware about?
Right. So a lot of it is, like you said, like you hit on the training and the development. For example, I got a call today before the show. Someone was really interested in some M&A work, and they have experience in it, but they wanted someone else to look over it. And so, I said, okay, well, what we can do is we have someone on the team that's really good at that. There's an hourly rate we can charge for that to kind of help walk you through and answer questions, as opposed to some organizations may say, oh, well, you need our silver plan for that or whatever, right?
Okay.
So, we have monthly CFO plans, but every business is different. Even if you stay within the same industry, every business is different based on, and it's because, again, every individual, we're all different as far as where our skills are. So you could work with 20 different companies in the same industry. And if you're doing a good job, which we of course try to do, those 20 businesses, we're going to be doing something slightly different with all 20 of them. We're not going to be doing the same thing, even though they're the same business and the same industry, because it's based on just filling gaps and understanding where those gaps are and what they need to do to get to the next level.
Wow. So for our listeners who are kind of hearing this for the first time, whether it's realizing, oh, I'm a little in over my head because I've got 20 trucks and 40 employees and I did not go to school for accounting or finance work, or they know they have a solid family member. It's just that family member just doesn't have the experience or the training or the tools to do it in their CFO position. How can they best find you and reach out to you?
Probably the best way to start would be just going to the website. It's ReynoldsCFO.com. And there's contact information there around how to call us or where to email us. You could also email us at info@ReynoldsCFO.com is another way to get in touch with us. And we can just take it from there. There's a contact form on the website you can use if you prefer to go that route. But one of the things that we do not charge a consultation fee or anything like that. Our first meeting is really an assessment of where your needs are and do we have the services to fit. And even if we do not have the services to fit, chances are I or someone on my team knows where to point you in the right direction. So we can help whether we're the right firm or not. We feel pretty confident we can at least find you the right person.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yes, thanks.
So honestly, kind of heard it here with kind of different perspectives, both on the human element and now also a little bit on the number side. But at the end of the day, it all just kind of ties down to what can we do to really make sure that torch gets passed on from one generation to the next. And as always, we always kind of have a universal bring back or closing the show question. And for a little bonus today, based on today's theme, I'm going to give our guests 2 bonus questions. So the first question would be words of wisdom for family business that are kind of struggling on how to approach the transition question. So that's the first question. The second is, beyond the dollars and cents, what is the top 3 questions a family business should find the answer to before having that transition conversation? So again, the first question is, words of wisdom for family businesses that are struggling, how to approach the transition question. And then the second is, beyond the dollars and cents, what are the top 3 questions a family business should find the answer to before having that discussion? Of course, for the lovely part that my listener, typical listeners knows in this section is just the legalese section of the show. So you can kind of fast forward this. The show is sponsored and brought to you truly, Anthony Chen, myself, with Lighthouse Financial Network, securities and advisory services offered through Osaic, member FINRA SIPC. Osaic is separately owned and are entities and or marketing names, products, services referenced here are independent of Osaic. The main office address is at 575 Broad Hollow Road, Melville, New York 11747. You can reach me at 631-465-900, extension 5075, or my email, Anthony Chen at lfnllc.com or LinkedIn. It would be much appreciated. You could kind of share, subscribe to my podcast here, and really appreciate you listeners tuning in. And that was still a one-time speed. You did not accidentally click on double. So again, bring our amazing guest back. Again, recap on the question. The first was words of wisdom for family businesses that are struggling how to approach the transition question, followed by top 3 questions family businesses should find the answers to before having that discussion. So kicking us off, Andrea.
Sure. Good questions. All right. Words of wisdom for a family business struggling on how to approach the transition question. I would say the best thing you could do would be to just start a conversation. And so if you weren't sure where to start, it could be a question of, do you want to have a conversation together? And do we think that we can do that? Or do we want some help to do that well? And I think you would be amazed just how many worlds it can open if you even ask the question of, do you want to have a conversation about this? And maybe what am I not seeing? So that would be my words of wisdom. For my top 3 questions beyond dollars and cents that I think a family would want to answer, the first would be, what are the values that we want to hold as a family, as individuals, or as a business as we start to think about what's coming up next? I think that question of why do we want to transition? What do I want? What's my next adventure if I'm the business owner beyond the business? Or if I'm the successor, what's my next adventure? And is that the business? Is the second question. And then the third would be just, what does transitioning well look like? Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? I know that's kind of squishy, but if we can picture in our minds what success looks like at the end, it can help us feel more open to lots of different paths that can pop up.
Thank you. Jamie.
That was a great answer. I'm not sure if mine will be.
Well, the crazy part is, as she's sharing her answer, I was going to have my Anthony's financial corner. And I'm thinking, is she saying the answer as I'm typing up my section here? So, Jamie, you got to make something up because I got to make something on the fly, too.
Exactly. That was a great answer. Yeah, I would say, as far as preparing for the discussion, hopefully this is not going to be an out of the blue, unexpected discussion with the next generation, right? Mm-hmm. That all along they've either known or not known that the plan is for them to take over. Now, I understand that things can change. People will change their mind. That happens. I get that. But I would think it should not be too much of a surprise. As far, like how to prepare for it, I do agree that I love the comment about the values, because you want that consistency across to, transcend multiple generations. You don't want what that business's identity is all about to change. Mm-hmm. Unless it's changing for the better, that's fine. But for the most part, you want to make sure that there's some kind of continuity there, right? Mm-hmm. And just the passion and where they want to go with it. Sometimes, and I've heard of where a person will let their son or daughter will take over their business, and then in a short period of time, literally like the first year, the dad, who's now retired, is a little upset or disagrees with the way things are going. And so I think a lot of that comes back to the continuity and the maintaining the same values of how that transition is going to work. Mm-hmm. So instead of, I know it's not exactly answering your question. It's not 3 answers. I think the main one is around the values, if we're not going to talk dollars and cents, because really you've got a brand. Let's say it's a business that's been in business for 50 years. You don't want to ruin that brand identity, the equity, the brand equity associated with that, mm-hmm. With any kind of drastic change or whatever.
Thank you both for kind of sharing your insights. And then as we're kind of closing out the show with called Anthony's Financial Corner here, it's going to be really hard for me to top these two. So I guess I'll just kind of piggyback on the answers with a little bit of a twist, as Andrea was sharing her insights when it comes to the children having their own individual identity. in kind of the financial planning corner and having that succession discussion, I can't help but having that. I'm going to steal or probably butcher the line from the movie for those who might be familiar with the movie called Inception at the very end, where the son was in that kind of hospital deathbed of his father, and he took out that picture and he took out that little flower kind of spin wheel. And the line was, "Yes, I know I've disappointed you because I can't be you." To which the fake father kind of responded by saying, "Well, I'm disappointed because you tried." So as a parting word of wisdom for the next gen, it's your parents are your parents, but as you're running and finding your values, the values that you're going to hold could be work ethic, could be doing the right thing at always, no matter what the cost for the client, or something that's very critical to the family itself that makes the family business successful. That doesn't always have to be translated to the exact same business. It could go from plumbing to, let's say, HVAC, or maybe a mechanic work, or maybe law work. But if the absolute value of that family is strong work ethic, you can have the same strong work ethic in other fields. But it's got to be a passion that a next gen have passion for. So if the conversation, again, comes down to communication, what the values are, it could simply be a shift of selling family business A, pass that torch to someone else who will share that same value for business A and give the next gen having that same value to a new business venture to business B. Doesn't have to be the exact same thing. So kind of expand one's mind of when preserving family value and a real asset, the net worth is the value itself. That's something no attorney, no accountant, not even myself, the financial planner, can really do the hard job of. That's going to be a conversation and comes of communication of values from parents or grandparents to the next gen. That's Anthony Chen's Financial Shake. Thank you for listening in to Family Business Radio.